everything works well now.
Great.
I would like, sorry for the small technical problems. I would like to thank you all for being with us today online at the Technical University of Crete in a lecture which is organized by the School of Mineral Resources Engineering under an initiative by the SPE student chapter of the Technical University of Crete. I'm really happy because today we have a prominent scientist, an engineer with us, Ioannis Chatzis from the University of Waterloo in Canada. He is really an influential scientist with groundbreaking contributions in the field of petroleum engineering. During my PhD work, I have consulted many of his publications, and actually it is clear to me now how pioneering his work is, especially in coupling what the established field scale approach, the Darcy scale approach, with the actual scale where the transport phenomena in porous media in geological flows really emanate. And this is the pore scale model. He introduced and contributed a series of experimental studies using transparent glass micromodels, which is actually the equivalent of what we call microfluidics in our days. And these works have been really influential, both scientifically and in the engineering aspect. So thank you very much, Yanni, for being with us today. And with no other further delay, I give the floor to Liana Talaro, Ms. Talaro, who is the president of the SPE student chapter of the Technical University of Crete.
Thank you, Professor Chatzis. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to our second webinar of the year. Our speaker for today, as Professor Chatzis said, is the distinguished Professor Emeritus Ioannis Chatzis from the Department of Chemical Engineering of University of Waterloo of Canada. And the title of our webinar is The Oil and Gas Industry and How to Get a Professional Job in There. I just want to read some very important information about our speaker. Professor Chatzis has 109 papers published in premier journals, 149 publications in conference proceedings, is co-author of one textbook and has 3 patents. Apart from the Google Scholar AIDS Index, which is 49, and Scopus 39, and Web Science 33. Thank you very much for being with us today, Professor Chatzis.
My pleasure.
Now, Stavroula Panagiotiou will say some things about the abstract of our webinar. Stavroula, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Chrysoula. Thank everyone for being here. In today's talk, Professor Ioannis Chatzis will provide to us an overview of the petroleum engineering discipline and the areas that petroleum engineers and others get employment in the petroleum industry. He will also illustrate some of the key research findings in his career path, and he will provide to us some visualizations of flow behavior during immiscible and miscible displacement in porous media, as seen in video recordings of experimenting glass micromodels. I think it's time to proceed to the main event now. So, Professor Chatzis, if you'd like, you can start with your presentation now. The stage is all yours.
Thank you all for your kind words, and it is my pleasure to be with you this afternoon to address some aspects of the oil and gas industry and how to get a job there, because that's important for graduating engineers and those in the programs that aspire to work in the oil and gas industry. And on top of that, I would like to share with you some experiments that I performed regarding heavy oil recovery involving vapor extraction methods and pressure pulsing technologies. Is my presentation visible to you there? Hello?
Yes, yes.
It is, okay. So, first of all, I'd like to give you some tips how to get a job in the oil and gas industry. And here are the tips that are important to think about when it comes to looking to find a job in the oil and gas industry. First of all, discover the role that suits you the best. That's important. Number two, build connections and find a mentor. Number three, get an internship if possible. Number four, make a perfect resume. Number five, you have to have soft skills for the job, so you have to brush up your soft skills. And number six, prepare well for an interview when you go to get a job with a company in the oil and gas industry. Now, when it comes to discover the role that suits you the best, it is time to think about that role of yours, because you studied to become an engineer, you aspire to work in the oil and gas industry. So you have to do a thorough outline search on the following categories and figure out which role matches your skills and qualifications. There are many jobs in engineering when it comes to oil and gas industry. There are jobs also, sales jobs in the oil and gas industry. There are administration jobs in the oil and gas industry. There are safety jobs in the oil and gas industry and security jobs in the oil and gas industry. So these are a broad range of conditions that you can find a job. Now, how do you build connections and how do you find a mentor? First of all, building connections starts with your professors at school that you are studying, and your connections can lead you to meeting other people, other professionals that work in the oil and gas industry. So that way you establish a strong bond with them, as they can help referrals and give generous career-related advice. Now, in Waterloo, we have cooperative education programs at the University of Waterloo, and our students work for 4 months in industry, and they come back to school for another 4 months, and they alternate work and study. So they are getting this internship at the place of the work. However, if you don't have such a program, you can reach out to get an internship while studying and do that in a term that you're not taking courses. Internships are an excellent way to gain experience, and it must give you an opportunity to have better chances to getting a job. Another aspect is how to make a perfect resume. When it comes to applying for a job, you have to submit a resume, right? Make a resume that addresses your skills and experience for the job that you're applying for. Make your resume simple and concise. Use clear fonts with no and very little color, if possible. When it comes to applying for a job, you have to have your soft skills brushed up and be useful to you to any work environment. You have to have a strong command of communication skills and leadership abilities, as they are highly regarded by any employer. And finally, number 6, when you go for an interview, make sure you have a good night's sleep before the interview and dress conservatively for the big day. When it comes to talking to the person that interviews you or to people that interview you, have a good eye contact and good body language, and that can get you through. So make sure you are calm and attentive to the interviewer. Now, when it comes to what kind of experience and qualifications are required for people that would like to get the job in the oil and gas industry. Most of you in engineering discipline, you get a good foundation in mathematics, physics, earth sciences, geology, and for those with an engineering degree like petroleum engineering, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil and environmental engineering, geological engineering, these are disciplines highly sought after by the oil and gas industry, and they are very valuable to that industry. When it comes to petroleum engineering graduates in the oil, and they seek to find a job in the oil and gas industry, they work as drilling engineers, well completions engineers, pipeline engineers, well logging engineers, production operations engineers, process engineers, reservoir engineers, natural gas engineers, geologists, geophysicists. So these are the attributes of engineering jobs in the oil and gas industry, and many of these functions can be performed by other than a petroleum engineer with a degree in petroleum engineering. Process engineer, for example, can be a person with a chemical engineering background or a mechanical engineering background. But the topic of reservoir engineer, natural gas engineer, well logging engineer, pipeline engineer, well completion engineer, drilling engineer, these are primarily jobs sought after by petroleum engineers. Now, when it comes to the skills a person must have for the jobs that he's applying, in many jobs, the data analysis skills are very, very important. The person must be able to collect, comprehend, translate, and present a never-ending stream of data that must be thoroughly analyzed to make rational, logical, analytical, and effective decisions. Managerial skills is something that you gain with experience. You cannot become a manager right away after graduation. So to get to the management position, the person must be able to implement effective delegation strategies and set up policies in line with industrial handbooks and company regulations. Mathematical and computer skills are very important to any engineer, particularly petroleum engineer and software engineering capabilities. When it comes to simulations, you have to have a very strong mathematical and computer skills. The person must have exceptional mathematical and computer abilities to be able to simulate and come up with conditions for profitable gas and oil extraction methods. Number 4 is a very important subject of communication skills. Communication skills develop over time, but in many programs, there is a subject matter that is addressing public speaking, addresses communications and presentation skills. So when it comes to working for any work environment in petroleum engineering and petroleum industry and gas industry, the person should be a good communicator, must have good language skills as well as attributes that are highly regarded by employers in the need in the oil and gas industry. So when it comes to the places that one gets a job, you submit an application for a job, and sometimes you submit your resume and particulars of your training to many companies, and you expect to get a reply back from them. So that is rubbing your hands or twiddling your thumbs in the hope of getting a call for an interview is definitely not going to work out. So what I'm suggesting is that to get your foot at the door, you have to use your contacts and social media. Many managers ask their experienced employees for possible applicants for the jobs on a regular basis. If I'm a manager in a company and I'm trying to hire a new individual, I will ask my employees or my team members if they know of anybody that can be able to join the organization. So the employees then suggest to the management of all the candidates who they happen to know. It becomes easier for the applicants to get a chance that way. On the other hand, if you want to begin your career in the oil and gas industry, you have to have recommendations attached to your resume that the companies value a lot, the recommendations that they submit on your behalf. So in that way, those who know of you and those who know of your work, they will be very helpful in landing a job. Now, when it comes to working in Canada, here are some basic facts concerning oil and gas employment in Canada that we should be aware of. The Canadian oil and gas industry is expanding rapidly and has over 1 million people working in that industry. Canada is home to over 60% of North America's oil reserves. It is the largest oil and gas companies operate here. More than 1 million people work in the gas and oil industry in Canada. When it comes to location where in Canada, the province of Alberta is the location where the majority of oil and gas jobs are created. However, other provinces such as British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Ontario are also witnessing very similar development. So that's the talk I wanted to come up next regarding methods for oil recovery, particularly heavy oil in Canada, because heavy oil is very big in the Canadian scene of things. Here's the distribution of oil and gas, heavy oil and gas reserves worldwide. As you could see from here, Canada has over 3 trillion barrels of oil in the form of heavy oil. Venezuela is the next largest in heavy oil deposits in the form of about 2 trillion barrels. Russia has about 600 billion barrels. Middle East combined has about 530 billion barrels. United States has about 500 billion barrels. So as you could see, there's a lot of oil in the form of heavy oil in many parts of the world. In Alberta and Saskatchewan, these are the provinces in Canada that possess a lot of these heavy oil deposits. As you could see, over 340 billion barrels of oil is recoverable. And that's a lot of resource for the future generations. The problem is how to develop technologies to recover these heavy oil deposits that are friendly to the environment and also worthy of continuing our reliance on fossil fuels. Usually the heavy oil production involves new technologies that are much more difficult compared to the traditional recovery of lighter crude oils, which are easy to produce and have lower production costs. For heavy oil recovery, however, the demand has shifted because of the lack of conventional oil reserves. We have to rely on new sources of hydrocarbons. 3 trillion barrels of heavy oil deposits lie in the western part of Canada. And here's a map of Alberta and Saskatchewan where these deposits are located. Now, talking about heavy oils, this is a picture of the viscosity of these types of oils. Guabasca, as you see on the very top, has centipoise values of about 10 million centipoise at reservoir conditions. Next in line is the Athabasca. Next in line is Cat Canyon. Next in line is Peace River, much lower viscosity at in situ conditions. So even these very difficult to flow oils at high temperatures, they are flowable. And when you use technologies like vapor extraction, they are very easy to produce them because the solvent diffusing into heavy oil makes the viscosity very low, down to 1 centipoise condition. When it comes to technologies in heavy oil, you have steam assisted gravity drainage or steam along with solvents, half and puff mode, have been used in the past and continue to be used. In the late 1980s, Butler and his group in the University of Calgary developed what is known as the VAPEX process, vapor extraction. I also worked in that area in the year 2005 to 2010, and many of my students did master's and PhD degrees on VAPEX process. There are many other variations of heavy oil recovery methods involving CO2 and methane, steam along with additives. And the work continues on in these topic areas very extensively throughout research groups in Alberta and Saskatchewan, other parts of the world. Now, I'd like to share with you some aspects of the VAPEX process and what happens when solvent diffuses and mixes into heavy oil. So such a process is doable when it comes to making horizontal injection, horizontal production wells. And here's a video of, or a cartoon, if you like, of communicating injection and production wells. In the injection well, you inject the solvent, which is butane, propane, low hydrocarbons, also can be used for that purpose. And as in this case, butane dissolves into heavy oil, imagine this to be a cross-section of the reservoir, vertical cross-section of the reservoir. There is a chamber of butane gas, where in this part, all the oil, present there initially has drained all the way down to the production well. And at the top, you see the chamber growing horizontally. And in the vapor bitumen interface, the oil there drains in film form, collecting at the production well and pumping it out from there. So the mechanism of recovery then is oil flow by gravity drainage. It involves diffusion phenomena, capillary mixing, as well as convection phenomena that leads to better enhancement of the renewal of the interface. So the film flow phenomena are very dominant in this process, and the recovery from the space invaded by the butane vape chamber is very high. So that's what happens over time. And here are some visuals of apex process conducted in the lab, my lab, and in micromoles, and you see how the interface advances. The process is very slow, takes hours to clean up a micromole. So this is a different one here, different geometry. What's important to note is that in this area invaded by the vapor, it cleans the system very effectively, very little residual oil remains. And that is a very beneficial aspect. We have seen that if you have condensation happening, asphaltenes precipitate out in the invaded zone. So that will be another method of removing the heavy components of the heavy oil in situ as you carry out this process. Now, when it comes to thermal methods, thermal production methods rely on high delta T, to thermally stimulate the reservoir. They use steam flooding, steam-assisted gravity drainage, SAGD, steam assisted with solvents added. The coal production processes are very recently introduced. There are methods that don't rely on thermal simulation. It involves water flooding, slugs of solvent injection alternating with slugs of water. Cold heavy oil production with sand is also profitable in unconsolidated media. The new technologies being researched to improve heavy oil recovery will make up more reserves technically and economically feasible, and significantly greater petroleum supply will become available. If the efficiency of recovery becomes better, then you have more supply for the future generations. At present, oil recovery by water flooding, heavy oil deposits, you only get about 10 to 15% of the oil in place. The rest of it will be trapped or bypassed. So it's important to focus on technologies that are less energy intensive and more efficient to recover the oil from the point of view of recovery factor. So research began in about the turn of the century, the late 1990s to early part of 2000. And Professors Tim Spanos and Maurice Dussault at the University of Waterloo and Tim Spanos at the University of Alberta advanced this pressure passing technology. And the idea came to them by looking at the facts that when you have an earthquake, it was observed that oil production was increased in many oil wells. Were producing more oil compared to prior to seismic activity. So the pressure pulses moved the injected fluid into and out of the number of pore networks and obtain a more uniform injection, enabling increased oil production and increased oil recovery efficiency. So here is an illustration of how the pressure pulse technology started. It was developed to generate a porosity dilation wave, which creates pore scale dilation and contraction, predominantly in unconsolidated porous media. This leads to periodic liquid flow mechanisms in pore throats and unblocks them from free from oil. And it was found that the higher the permeability is, the farther is the transmission of the pressure wave. And this causes increased liquid flow velocity, and this flow velocity overcomes capillary blockage. So this is a technology where you have a wavefront generator at the surface. You have a way of injecting with a plunger by injecting gas. This is a compressed gas, and you let that gas expand to push the plunger into the formation, into the well, to the gas wellhead. So this water here will be pushed in instantly pretty much. And once it stops here, then you release the gas, you make up pulsing water, you fill that space up again, and continue on periodically injecting water into the formation in pulse form. Let's say you have a pulse every 30 seconds. And the volume of a pulse could be of the order of 25 liters per pulse. So the pressure pulsing technology creates large amplitude pressure pulses into the porous media, dramatically increases the liquid flow rate instantly, and this leads to higher petroleum production rates, higher recovery factors, and prolonged reservoir lifetime. Now, imagine you have an injection well and a production well where there are heterogeneities. So the injected water, the blue here, will prefer to go through paths of least resistance and bypass a lot of other regions where the permeability is much lower. So this will happen when you have no pulse injection method. However, with pressure pulsing, you can force the water to go almost everywhere in the zone of interest. So as a result, you have less viscous fingering phenomena and more better sweep efficiency of the oil in place. When it comes to experimental work and findings, many experiments carried out to determine feasibility of pressure pulse technology and understand the phenomena. It was demonstrated by fluid flow visualization experiments, and many significant conclusions were drawn from laboratory experiments. Overall, the pressure pulse technology was found to be a very promising technology. What was found is that the pressure pulsing created a high pressure bulb that would diffuse through the porous medium, and the injected water is in pulse form, mobilizes the oil phase more efficiently. The liquid flow rates could be significantly increased during the pulse. Most effective method for heavy oil and overcoming capillary forces for mobilization of trap oil is this technology of pressure pulse injection. I have been involved in oil phase produced as an oil and water emulsion by mobilization experiments carried out at the University of Kuwait in collaboration with Professor Ali Garous, and the student was Yusuf Al-Mula. This paper was published in this year, 2022, in the Journal of Porous Media. Now, the experimental aspects of water injection in pulse form involves reduction of viscous fingering, and the reduction of viscous fingering leads to higher oil recovery rates, delayed water breakthrough due to reduced water channeling compared to continuous water injection method. In every experiment carried out in pulse water injection mode, the oil recoveries were found to approach 100% at the microscopic level, and this will be seen in a movie shortly. This is visuals of injecting water in dark part here to displace oil, clear here. And this was done at the laboratory to demonstrate the fingering phenomena that happens in unconsolidated packing of glass beads. And the same thing with pulsing, you see that the fingering phenomena for the same period of time were much less and better sweep happened. When it comes to pressure pulsing to remove residual oil in water flooded reservoirs, I did some experiments involving micromoles. Here is a picture of the state of residual oil in a micromole, which is a form that remains in water wet media, and the waterability here is water wet conditions. Now, by pulse injection, the oil ganglia have been broken up to smaller values, some of them in sub-pore dimensions, and you can emulsify that oil as you keep on injecting water in pulse form. I presented this work in the Society of Coronary Symposium in 2011. So next, I'd like to share with you that video. I hope I will manage to am I heard?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think you need to stop sharing and then start sharing only the video window
Start video.
as we did before.
Okay. Pulse sharing and how do I get the video? Okay. Is that visible now?
No, we
No.
cannot see it.
Okay.
Yannick, you need to stop sharing the presentation.
Stop sharing the presentation.
Okay, and then restart. Yes, and then restart sharing. Only the video window.
Is this video visible now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Maybe it takes some time.
Sharing. Stop video. Share. Oh my goodness. Share files. Share screen. No,
Okay, yes, it is visible now. Yes,
visible.
it
Okay.
works. Yes,
Okay, let's go from the very beginning.
from the beginning. Yes, thank you.
This is, we'll go from right to left, injecting water in pulse form. So this is forms of water injection in pulse form. Nine, 10. So imagine this micromole to represent a very small slice of the reservoir. Into this small slice of the reservoir, vertical slide, we keep on injecting water in pulse form. So in the process, as you have seen, the residual oil was mobilized. So the process is very efficient, particularly for water-wet systems. Otherwise, in water flooding operations, none of this level of recovery will be possible. Okay? So, come to think of it, I have to go back now to the presentation mode and conclude my talk. Yeah, screen. Is my presentation here again.
So we still see the video. I don't know why.
Okay, you still see the video. Okay.
You need to stop sharing and then restart sharing only the presentation.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry for the inefficiency on my part.
It's okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, now we can see your entire web browser.
Entire web browser. So let me go back to it. Is this visible now?
It is still the web browser again.
Let me share.
Okay, it works now, yes.
So in conclusion, I like to say that pressure pulsing is a very promising and valuable technology for improved heavy oil recovery. Pressure pulse improves oil production and recovery, decreases water to oil ratio, and prolongs the reservoir life. Various methods of applying pressure pulse technology make it flexible complement to extraction methods. The pressure pulse technology works best if there is no gas cap present, and also has promise for hot water injection methods in heavy oil reservoirs. And I plan to recommend this to do pilot testing in industry soon. The industry is very hesitant to assume such responsibilities without the guidance. So that's the end of my talk, and thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you guys.
Okay, Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Professor.
I will
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank you very
receiving any questions.
Thank you very much for this interesting and useful presentation, Professor Chatzis.
Thank you, Dimitris.
Now let's move on to the Q&A session. So any questions, please submit them to the chat and or raise your hand so they can be answered. So I see there is a question here in the chat. I will read it out loud to you. So Mr. Stelios Matikas asks, what is the future of oil industry in relation to climate change and its repercussions to it?
The climate change is, first of all, I personally believe it is not so much related to our energy utilization, and CO2 capture technologies will be able to overcome fossil fuel burning. The efficient technologies such as VAPEX, such as pressure pulsing, will minimize a lot the burning of fossil fuels, because in steam flooding operations, you utilize 1 barrel of oil to generate steam to produce 3 barrels of oil. So that means your net gain is only 2 barrels. You burn 1 for steam generation. So if you substitute and eliminate burning of fossil fuels in that technology will become more efficient. We cannot do away with fossil fuels as a means of continuing our presence on this planet, because everybody needs heating, electricity, and even the new technology that will come in car manufacturing. The solar panels and all that will not be able to overcome the needs for energy. So solar fuels, fossil fuels will be there for the next century or so, this century and the next century. The problem is how to efficiently utilize this resource that we are possessing. So in my opinion, the climate change is not particularly due to the burning of fossil fuels so much. It has a lot to do with solar activity. The more active the sun is, the less will be the rise in temperature because of colder conditions established on Earth. Solar activity is a key to the problem of global warming. Global warming happens when there is less solar activity happening. At times that we had very high solar activity, the Earth's atmosphere cooled down a lot. So I remember as a kid back in the 1950s, growing up in the village of Kurkuli, who had snow accumulation of 2 meters in my village, in Evia. Nowadays, this phenomenon doesn't happen so often. But expect to see cooling effects in about 10 years from now because of solar activity. But in the very end, hydrocarbon will be useful for the present as well as for the future. The problem is how to best use new technologies for recovering them. That's the answer to that question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, I think Mr. Marios Valavanidis has raised his hand.
Thank you for this inspiring presentation, Professor Chatzis. I would like to pose a couple of questions on PPT.
Yes.
First of all, the network you showed us in the video pertained to carbonate type of of geologic medium, of porous medium? Was it?
In some way, yes, it has pretty much fractures in it. So to mimic fractured porous media where the viscous phenomena are more, viscous fingering phenomena are more predominant. But we have all kinds of micromodels utilized. That was one of them to demonstrate even in such media with high degree of heterogeneity, the process is very efficient.
Mm-hmm. So the pulses are related to the particular characteristics of the formation, meaning do they exploit any hydraulic hammering effect, or is it a matter of attenuation of any propagating waves in the?
Well, if the pulsation is low frequency, that means one pulse every half a minute, for example, that is a low frequency wave, and you have temporarily increase in pressure at the injection point, and that pressure declines over a period of time. So the pressure builds up to some steady state, but that will take some time to get to that steady state condition. But keep on injecting and the pressure will rise temporarily, and the decay of pressure happens. Pressure up again and decay of pressure happens. So these phenomena lead to instantaneous increase in pore velocities when you do the pulsing, and these high velocity conditions generate mobilization of residual oil and other unblocking effects.
Okay, so as a rule of thumb, you need a tight reservoir, meaning no fractures. The more fractures you have, the less efficient is the method, or vice versa?
Well, we're not intending this method to create fracturing.
No. I mean, if there are already some fractures.
If there are already fractures, no problem. The fractures will not pose a problem to the use of this technology.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're forcing the fluid in a pulse form to go into the tighter matrix part of the system. It is not just going through the fracture. The flow is not going through the fracture only. It goes through the tighter zones as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome, Mario.
Thank you. So there is another question in the chat. Mr. Rubis Panagiotis asks, is PPL method better in water management compared to the already established method?
The pressure pulsing technologies definitely will be an advantage to improving oil recovery, even for water flooding applications. If you can do that, it will improve a lot the recovery of oil produced. Not so much, the technology could be used in conventional oil reservoirs as well. The problem is people have not been using it for reasons unknown to me, but there is evidence that you can use it for conventional oils.
Right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? You can raise your hand if you will. Yes,
Marius.
Mr.
Again, it's me. So, can you comment on, I mean, if you try to model PPT, would there be any kind of modeling relation to flow dependency of flow rate dependency of relative permeabilities, meaning that the effect of these pulses is that they create alternations of high pulsing fluctuations of high flow rate and low flow rate, high flow rate, low flow rate, and that intrigues some kind of pressure build-up, and then you
Pressure
have
decay.
some,
There is
pardon?
pressure build-up and pressure decay.
Yeah.
The flow is periodic, it's not constant. It's pulse injection, pretty much. And personally, I have not done any modeling of this process by now. I retired and I need to get back to with a student or another research associate, perhaps, that can help develop modeling abilities. I encourage you to work on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Mr. Ioannis Andreas.
So I would like to follow up on the question of Marius. How are these pulses produced? I mean, technically, in the experiment.
In the experiments, I had a syringe,
Okay.
and I had a spring loaded piston, and I apply pressure on the top to inject the piston down to some distance, and then the spring will bring up the piston. And that same time, I had a way of refilling the syringe.
Okay.
So it was a micro syringe. The volume injected at any given instant was less than 0.1 cubic centimeters.
So, and this corresponds to, in terms of, let's say, pore volumes, how much?
Well, the pore volume of the model was about 1/20th of the volume of the model.
So the pulse was 1/20th of the pore volume of the model.
Right.
Okay, but this pulse was, it is a sudden, by definition, a sudden.
Very high velocity, high capillary number flow.
Okay, so basically, what I understand by reviewing your experiment is actually that you provide a lot of mechanical energy very fast.
Very fast.
And this is physically by the system absorbed in order to break up the ganglia locally. So they are not mobilized. They do not go from one pore to the other, but they break up locally. I don't know why. Maybe because they bounce on the walls due to the pulse. It's
like a bullet sent to the wall. It will become smashed up.
Okay, so actually it is like a jet flow. You have the ganglion. It smashes on the pore walls. It breaks up. So the energy from the pulse is actually encapsulated into interfacial energy. You increase the interfacial energy of the system by increasing the surface area between the two faces.
Right.
Okay, and then at the next pulse, the ganglia become so small, so they are not.
They can go through the pore channels.
Okay, that's impressive. Also, this application, when you said that the motivation for this was that there was the observation that there was an increase of oil production from wells, seismic activity.
Right.
This is actually something that we need to take into consideration also for the case of Greece. Because we have a lot of seismic activity here, so we don't have wells. But
I wish the politicians were in a position to go ahead for the exploration of oil and gas in Greece a long time ago.
Okay.
I visited the University of Patras in 1988, and with Mario Pachules, I visited the island of Zakynthos πηγή του Ηροδότου.
Okay.
And you see the oil coming there to the surface of the sea. And there's a deposit there next by on land. The swamp area full of heavy oil. Because the light components evaporate, you have about pretty much about 200 στρέμματα βάλτος με heavy oil.
Okay.
So definitely the western part of Greece, the area between Zakynthos and Peloponnesus, they have a lot of hydrocarbons present. The fact of the matter is that there is no drilling rig in Greece to do drilling for oil and gas. You have to rely on major oil companies to come and drill for you. I was told a story that at the time they had invited a drilling rig from Romania to the island of Zakynthos. They drilled to 1,500 meters. The target was to go to 1,700 meters, and the job was incomplete. So without drilling, you cannot produce oil and gas. And if the government and Ελληνικά Πετρέλαια, εταιρεία Ελληνικά Πετρέλαια is serious about it, they have to develop drilling capabilities.
Okay, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. There is another question in the chat. Mr. Vasilis Gaganis asks, when transferring PPT to a real world case, should there be high pressure built up in the wellbore as well? Would that imply the need of newly drilled or recased wells to withstand the pressure?
Well, the injection well definitely is at a higher pressure compared to the formation. Pressure to push the oil towards the production well, right? So the pressure that is generated in a pulse form, of course, it should not exceed the fracture pressure of the reservoir. Otherwise, you will create fracturing. So the pressures that you inject in a pulse form are high enough, but not exceeding the fracture pressure. And so long you maintain the conditions at that level, you're okay.
So there is no need for building for chasing something there.
Well, in any event, when you complete a well for injection purposes, you have cemented and perforated the bottom end for injection.
Mm-hmm.
So you have cemented, you do the well completion properly so that the thing will be able to be operated. Otherwise, you will be producing sand coming into the injection part. So you have to have cementing in place in the injection well and perforation those wells for well completion.
Okay, thank you very much. I see that Mr. Marios Valvanidis has raised his hand.
Yes, Marius.
Again, is it at the end of the day flow rate driven pulse or pressure pulse? Or is it something in between?
Well,
because for example, if you're in the real case, you need, okay, you create the pulse, but you also need not to become in an overhang state. You need enough of flow rate to maintain that pulse all the way to the formation. Am I wrong? Or
well,
do I miss something?
The way I see it is that if I have a container and I have a piston inserted here,
okay,
to pulse a volume of not big enough volume, the volume that I'm imagining to be realistic will be about 25 liters per instant injection, 25 liters, and periodically every 10 seconds, repeat that.
Okay.
Okay, so that way you can inject significant volume to maintain the level of production you wish to attain.
Okay, and that is on top of the constant influx.
No, you don't have constant influx. You have periodic
Okay,
injection. Slag form, a slag, instantly inject 25 liters, instantly inject it, wait for 10 seconds, and again another 25 liters, and so on. That's the mode that I realized to be
the most efficient.
possible,
Mhm.
instead of continuously injecting.
Thank
I
you.
understood on that.
Thank you very much for the questions.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? I see no further questions in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, so if there are no further questions, I would like to once again thank you very much, Professor. Oh, I see.
Leroy, yes,
Yeah,
we have.
So, Mr. Nikos asks, if you could describe shortly again how a civil engineer can go through his incredible world of gas and oil industry. I mean, the main topics that he can deal with is only constructions.
Construction, pipeline engineering, platforms, building platforms, oil and gas platforms. Civil engineers are very valuable in that capacity. So most of the offshore facilities require a lot of civil engineers.
Okay, thank you very much. I see that Mr. Ioannis Zarikos has raised his hand.
Hi, hello. Hi,
Hello,
Professor.
Ioannis.
So I have one question. So in your experiment, you have the effect of PPT is a few thousand bores. What would you expect to be the effect on the real scale? Will the effect decrease over distance?
Of course, the pressure pulse will not propagate at the same wave maximum as it penetrates into, as it propagates through the porous medium. So at the injection well, for example, the pressure pulse could be of the order of several hundred psi, and farther away from the injection well, that magnitude will not be as high. Did I answer that question?
Yes, yes. Thank you
How
very
are
much.
you, Ioannis?
Thank you very much. Let's see if there are any other questions. Mr. Gaganis asks in the chat, would a long horizontal well fit better to the full-scale problem than a vertical one?
For pressure pulsing activities, I don't envision this technology to be useful for horizontal wells. But I address this pressure pulsing technology only using vertical wells. For horizontal wells, you cannot propagate the wave from production to the injection well, because the distance between injector and producer using horizontal wells is not that great.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions?
So I think
there are no further questions.
Well, I wish you Merry Christmas, guys, and Happy Holidays. Καλά Χριστούγεννα να έχετε.
Καλά Χριστούγεννα και σε εσάς.
Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.
Ευχαριστούμε
πολύ.
πάρα πολύ, Γιάννη, για αυτή την παρουσίαση.
Να είστε καλά, να είστε καλά.
Καλά.
Ευχαριστώ.
Άμα ο καιρός το επιτρέψει, θα σας δω του χρόνου. Ελπίζω.
Και
Να
εμείς.
κάνω και ένα ταξίδι στην Κρήτη.
Θα σε περιμένουμε. Είναι
Εντάξει.
υπόσχεση αυτό.
Έγινε.
Εντάξει. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ.
Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Καλή
Να είστε
συνέχεια.
καλά, καλές γιορτές, να έχετε και πάντα με υγεία. Πάντα καλά να είστε.
Thank you all for
Και μην το βάζετε
attending.
κάτω, Η φαντασία μπορεί να δημιουργήσει πολλές λύσεις στα προβλήματά μας.
Ευχαριστούμε, Γιάννη.
Να είστε καλά. Γεια σας.
Okay.